Hello and welcome to That Atleti Podcast. I'm Jeremy Beren of Into the Calderon, the number one English language resource for Atlético de Madrid news, commentary, analysis, insight. Doing a solo pod today. Ricky Menendez, my co-host, unfortunately is under the weather. He could not be with us today. The last time I did a solo show was right before the season started, I think. No, it was after. I think it was before the summer transfer window shut. I'm fairly sure. And I think that went pretty well. I seem to remember that episode getting a fairly good reception, but you all will be the judge, the listeners, the viewers. Thank you all for tuning in wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment as well. I love having discussions with you all about Atlético de Madrid, this club, this team that we all love. Well, I would venture to say most of us love. Maybe not all, but most of us watching or listening on Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Leave a 5-star review, a rating and review. That would be great if you could do that. You may notice that my background, the scenery behind me is a little bit different. That's because I am in Madrid right now. Delighted to be back here in this wonderful city. I think I've timed it pretty well because we have 3 games coming up that I will be around for. First up is Getafe at the Coliseum on Sunday. Then on Wednesday in the Champions League at Partidazzo against Inter Milan. And then next Saturday against Oviedo at home. Important stretch coming out of the year's final international break. And toward the end of the program, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Getafe game. That's the one I'm going to preview here tonight. It is nighttime. I now understand a little bit better why Ricky is so damn tired at the end of every episode. I guess this may be a little just peeling back the layers and telling you how the show is run. So we tend to record on Thursdays at midnight Madrid time, which is around 4 or 5 o'clock, depending on daylight savings, back home for me in Arkansas. And for me, it's before dinner. It's late afternoon. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling, I still have quite a bit of energy in reserve. And Ricky is just like, man, I got to go to sleep. and now I understand because it is almost 11 p.m. here in Madrid, and I'm starting to feel it. So, yeah, I see. I understand maybe a little bit more now. All right, so the weekend, can we call it the weekend? I guess it's still midweek. It's off to a fairly good start for Atletico as an institution. Atlético Madrileño are top in Segunda B. Atlético Femenino defeated FC Twente 4-0 today in the Women's Champions League to put themselves in a much stronger position than they were last time we checked in on them. They had lost to Juventus 2-1 at home. And the men's first team, of course, back in action away from home this weekend, where we have won just a solitary game against Betis on our travels this season. Do let us hope we can correct that. We had a column this week from Zach Lowy, who's a freelancer. You can read his work at a bunch of different places. He had a column for us this week about Alexander Sørloth, and I think that's where I'm going to start the show today. Or tonight, because I am just continually fascinated by this situation with Sørloth and how he is factoring into the plans for however much longer he's going to be here. Because I watched him over the international break for Norway, right? Norway collected a pair of 4-1 wins against Estonia and Italy, respectively. That has helped them qualify for the World Cup for the first time, directly for the World Cup, for the first time since 1998. So the first time this century, we're going to get to see Erling Haaland play at a World Cup, which could be pretty fun. But also Alexander Sørloth, who played pretty dang well for Norway over this break. He opened the scoring with a quick-fire brace, both goals from headers against Estonia. And then he assisted Antonio Nusa's equalizer against Italy in that eventual 4-1 win on Sunday. I mean, it contrasts with Sørloth's situation at Atlético de Madrid, and it's not un drama necessarily, but it is this is one of these storylines to watch as we inch closer to the January window. Is Sørloth going to agitate for a move? Are Atletico going to sell him? How aggressive will Atletico be in the winter market? How will Apollo Sports Capital affect the plans for Mateo Alemany in his first window as sporting director? There are still a few unknowns here. And I'm going to circle back to Apollo in just a little bit because we got some information about the club accounts this week, and it's pretty good news for Atleti. Sørloth this season has played 491 minutes in La Liga, an average of around 45 minutes per game. It's about the same average he had last year when he played 1,566 minutes, 15 starts. In La Liga this season, he has made 5 starts. So it's about the same pace, right? I don't think he's going to start this weekend. Simeone has been working in training this week with Julian Alvarez and Antoine Griezmann as his forwards. And later on in the show, when I do the Getafe preview, I'll talk a little bit about what the 11 for the weekend might look like. But Sørloth is going to have a market, I think. And it really is going to depend on how he feels. If he feels what he can achieve his best form entering the World Cup. His situation is a little different from other players in that Sørloth is a fixed starter for Norway. He plays more as a winger with Norway. And obviously he's not a fixed starter here. But one of the reasons I think that Simeone has been persisting as kind of like an ugly and like a negative connotation, but I don't mean it in that way. Simeone has been, I think, worried about losing the dressing room. Because if you think back to the 21-22 season, year after we won the league, I thought entering the season we were in a fairly good position to challenge again. But things kind of fell apart early that year, and Simeone lost the dressing room. Really over the course of calendar year 2022, with this situation kind of reached its nadir before the World Cup, before the Qatar World Cup. I think that left a significant impact on El Cholo. I think he came face to face with his mortality as Atletico manager. Well, Atletico head coach. And I think ever since then, he has been even more. This is one of the reasons he's so aggressive with substitutions. Like, this is one of the reasons why a player like Nahuel Molina plays as well. I don't think anyone can really argue that Molina has been all that awesome this year. He's been serviceable, but Molina too is not a starter. Clement Lenglet has not played since the Celta game. Kind of a strong message to him. But Lenglet had a similar situation. You want all the players to feel important. You want to try to divide their minutes in as egalitarian a way as possible, as equitable a way as possible. And this is why Sørloth has made 5 starts this season, when most of his performances, most of his 11 appearances in La Liga, he has not really demonstrated that he's been up to standard. He's only scored 2 goals in 491 minutes. That's a really, really poor 0.37 goals per 90. Yikes. He was over 1 goal per 90 last year when he scored 20 in La Liga. Again, yikes. But I think that weighs on El Cholo, the prospect of losing the room. I don't think he ever wants to do that again. So you have kind of square peg and round hole situations with certain players in the team. Sørloth is one of them. So I am continuing to watch this situation. I think it's utterly fascinating how Sørloth is kind of a beast for Norway, and his spot for Norway isn't under threat at all. But at Atletico, some of his performances this season, I've been pretty harsh on him, but they have been really kind of borderline unprofessional. Also, over this international break, we had 3 Atletico players called up for Spain duty. A 4th, Robin Lenormand, is slowly starting to work his way back into training sessions. He may be back before the end of the year. I did watch most of Spain against Turkey, 2-2 draw, to end the World Cup qualifying campaign. Spain had pretty much already qualified. Spain and Turkey had virtually already qualified from their group. Spain had not conceded in the qualifying phase until this game against Turkey. So it was an interesting game. It was a fun game to watch. Alex Baena created 5 chances in the 2 games over this break. Pretty good. It's a pretty good November for him. We're starting to see Baena look like Baena again in the really ill-timed and unfortunate and unlucky problems that he had. His first game for us, he suffers the adductor injury. I think it was an adductor injury. Then he has the appendicitis. And he still hasn't played a full 90 minutes for this club. But in these last 5 games, he started all of Atletico's 5 most recent games. And he's starting to show his influence. He's starting to demonstrate that ability, his elite creativity that made Atletico plop down 40 million plus for him. And is, I think, going to make him a key player at the next World Cup. So Baena, I think, is going to go to the World Cup. That's written in stone, I think. Robin Lenormand, when Lenormand is healthy again, assuming he is healthy next summer, I think Lenormand is going to the World Cup. Marcos Llorente is going to go to the World Cup. We spoke about this with Ricky last week when I was back in the States. But Llorente started and played all 90 minutes against Turkey. And I just think that versatility, that willingness to defend Luis Enrique found this out about Llorente as well. I'm surprised that it took De La Fuente so long, maybe because De La Fuente doesn't watch our games. But, Llorente is absolutely a player you should take to the World Cup, and I believe Spain are going to take him to the World Cup. Pablo Barrios, I think, probably going to go as well. So that's 4 Atleti players playing for Spain in the next World Cup, which is pretty cool. I mentioned Sørloth and Norway and how they had this big, not really a final, but this important game against Norway to seal that against Italy, to seal that World Cup qualification. Jack Raspadori did not play in that game for Italy. Raspadori gave an interview to Mundo Deportivo that was published today, saying basically he's not sure why he's not getting the playing time, but all he can do is work hard and stay ready for when El Cholo calls on him, which is a great attitude. That's a professional attitude. When we had Joe from the Napoli pod on back in August to walk us through the Raspadori transfer, what he can and cannot. Well, maybe not what cannot, because Raspadori is a pretty versatile player, but basically how Raspadori would fit in this team is what I meant to say. So when we had that conversation about Raspadori, it was the attitude and the professionalism that repeatedly came up in our conversation. And I don't know, I think you're seeing in this interview a player who, he's probably not getting the playing time he expected. I can't really imagine that he's happy with 1 start in La Liga, 142 minutes played, 0 goal contributions in the Spanish league to this point. In all competitions this season, Raspadori has played 9 times, 3 starts, 248 minutes, 1 goal and 1 assist, both of them coming in the Champions League. Talented player who can patch different holes in the attack, which is something that Joe told us from the Forza Napoli pod. I've liked the cameos, but we're still waiting to see if there is a Raspadori, a breakout. So Raspadori isn't really even part of the Italy reckoning right now. So another player who I'm interested to see, because this is maybe not a decisive time of the year, but you had this stretch of 3 games, right? 2 more at home. We don't leave Madrid until the first week of December when we go to Barcelona. I imagine that game is going to be held at Camp Nou. Barca are returning there this weekend. I would imagine that game is going to be a Camp Nou, where we beat Barca away last year, but we haven't won at that stadium since 2006. So this is before the end of the calendar year. You want to see Atleti not only solidify that top 4 position, but there's only 6 points separating us from Real Madrid, and we have head-to-head over Real Madrid. I'm not saying anything about anything, but you want to stay in the fight. I've been pretty consistent on this messaging all season to this point that when the last 5 weeks were all around, I want to see Atletico have a mathematical shot at the league. This is a really important stretch to stay in that fight because the December fixture list is kind of tricky. What else can I talk about from the international break before I move on to other stuff? Jan Oblak, we're not sure about Oblak's status for this weekend. He left the Slovenia camp with some kind of a physical ailment. I'm not entirely sure what it was. If one of you all, listener / viewer, if one of you all know what specifically it was, please let me know. But Oblak underwent tests back in Madrid. Nothing serious, but the club doesn't want to take risks. So it very well could be Juan Musso in goal this weekend for his first appearance of season 2025-26, his first appearance as a player on a permanent contract for Atlético de Madrid. As far as our South American contingent, we know that Julian Alvarez, Giuliano Simeone, and Alvaro Molina did not travel with Argentina to Angola for their friendly because they were not vaccinated against yellow fever. Thiago Almada and Nico Gonzalez did, though. They traveled for that one. Almada was substituted before the end due to a cut on his head. I think it was his eyebrow. Looked pretty nasty, pretty bloody, but seems like he's okay. Nico played left back in this game. And did fairly well from what I saw. I'm sure most of you saw, especially if you're watching this from the US, that the USMNT beat Uruguay 5-1 in their last in the last meeting of this FIFA break, their last fixture for both nations. Josemar Jimenez did not play in that game, thank God. So Jimenez should be fit and healthy and good to go when we visit Getafe on Sunday, a game that I'm expecting to be quite the battle. El Comandante getting closer to a century of appearances for Uruguay. And staying with this fixture, and more specifically with the United States national team, I wrote this week for Into the Calderon about Johnny Cardoso and what's going on with Johnny. From I guess, viewing his situation through a couple of different prisms. Number one, he is facing a real uphill battle to convince Mauricio Pochettino, the U.S. coach, that he should go to the World Cup next year. Johnny has played 3 games this season. He hasn't played a minute of competitive football since August. And the second angle through which I viewed the situation is Koke has taken his lunch money. I think we're not making a big enough deal of this, by the way. Sunday will be Koke's 700th game for Atlético de Madrid. 700. That is nearly 150 appearances more than Adelardo Rodriguez, whose record Koke broke in 2022. The appearances record used to belong to Adelardo, who played for us in the 60s and 70s. One of the greatest legends in Atletico history, a midfielder as well. So Koke, assuming he doesn't, knock on wood, doesn't pick up a serious injury or anything between now and Sunday, I would expect Koke to start that game for his 700th appearance. And this speaks to the inevitability of Koke, how he continues to lead the way. I mean, he's the skipper. He's been the club captain for many years. You expect this, but last season at this time, his situation was really changing. right? Simeone makes a big call in a Champions League game in which we had to get a result. We ended up winning this game against most of the odds, right? But we had to get a result when we went something like a result when we went to PSG last November. And Simeone made a pretty big call in benching Koke for that game. And that started a trend that carried through pretty much the rest of the season. Koke was a substitute. And he had never really encountered such a situation, unless you're going all the way back to his age 17, 18, 19, like into age 20 seasons. Koke made only 20 starts last year. Fewest starts in the season since 2011-12. Diego Simeone returned to the club as the head coach midway through the 2011-12 season. We went on to win the Europa League. One of Simeone's first acts of business was stopping Koke's transfer to Malaga. Koke was like one step away from joining Malaga, then in the Champions League, or about to qualify for the Champions League. Imagine if Koke had moved to Malaga, imagine the effect that would have had on his career, the effect it would have had on Simeone, and engendering respect isn't the word I want to use, but how would this have affected Simeone's tenure? How would this have affected Koke's career? How would this have affected Atletico as on this trajectory that we've been on for the last 14 years? But yeah, Johnny hasn't been healthy, he hasn't been fit. It's true. But the past 3 games, he's been available. He's been in the squad. He's just been an unused substitute. And it's because Koke is playing really damn well. He's not doing a ton of work, nor should he, in terms of dual winning back possession, not even really ball carrying, but we're looking at forward passes, progressive passes, knitting moves together, dictating the tempo, serving as the metronome of Atlético de Madrid. Atletico haven't lost with Koke in the lineup this season. In La Liga, 7 wins, 2 draws, 0 defeats. I mean, Simeone can't drop him because we don't lose when Koke starts. I think this is probably the best football Koke's played in 2 or 3 years. And it's great to see it. It shows how competitive and viable he remains at the top level. And Johnny he's got work to do. He wasn't at training Thursday due to an illness, the same illness that ruled Alvarez out of training on Wednesday, but Alvarez came back today. He was just in the gym. Johnny's not going to start against Getafe. I would anticipate he plays some role in that game, but I'm also not certain about that. Just the way Koke is playing, you can't really drop him, and it's deserved. Koke has worked very quietly, very humbly in the background, as you would expect from Koke, to take that starting spot back. Speaking of training today, Giuliano Simeone, this was a scare for a few hours this afternoon. When I got the alert, David Medina at Marca, like at 1 p.m. Giuliano Simeone didn't finish training today. There's fear of an injury. Sound the alarms. He's going in for tests. It's like, shit. Like, you got to be kidding me. The one international break, he doesn't go. He gets hurt. Fortunately, we found out a few hours later that Giuliano was not hurt. It was just a precaution. Tests rule out an injury. He ended training early just as a precautionary measure. He was feeling some muscular pain, but there is no injury. So we will see what kind of role he plays on Sunday. But this did get me thinking, and the guys at Atletico Stats posted these actually. Like, even if it isn't going to come to pass on Sunday, even if Giuliano was fine and good to go, whether he starts or comes off the bench, what Atletico would look like if Giuliano can't play. And I think, going back to Alex Baena for a minute, I think the best lineup option is probably just to put Beren on the left wing. You have Beren on the left, Nico on the right. That was part of the initial plan, right? Was that Nico primarily as a right winger, inverting with a very strong left foot and kind of a weak right foot, but a good left foot. Nico cutting in from the right, Beren on the left, where he came to such prominence at Villarreal and where he plays for Spain. This, forces Llorente into playing right back, but I know some of us want to see him in a more advanced role, more attacking role, maybe in midfield. So I feel like if Giuliano can't play, that this is what Simeone will do. I don't really want to see a scenario where Molina and Llorente are the options on the right. Simeone has done this in Molina's recent appearances, kind of making him into a makeshift center back. Llorente has played the same role this season. Simeone has been doing this with his right backs, tucking them in as additional center backs in possession. This way you add an additional player through the middle and you can generate some numerical superiority through the middle. It's really funny when I see and hear the trope. There are a few Simeone tropes that just have been like constantly disproven over the years, but people still stick to them. One of them is his salary. The other one is that Simeone never changes. He's defensive and terroristic and la-di-da, but Simeone has changed immensely over the years. He would not have lasted this long at Atlético de Madrid without being as adaptable and even chameleonic as he is. And Simeone does get some stick sometimes for being cautious and pragmatic. I understand those arguments. I have agreed with them many different times, even this season. But like, you can't say that Simeone is a leopard whose spots don't change. He's very much not that. And the in possession, out of possession ideas, the past 2 seasons especially, are proof of that. Let's see what else did I want to talk about. I wrote about this as well this week. Conor Gallagher gave an interview to Diario AS, Pico Diaz, who's in charge of the Atletico section at Diario AS. And Gallagher said he is happy at Atletico and wants to stay. This despite Gallagher playing under 600 minutes between La Liga and the Champions League this season and having made only 2 starts to date in La Liga. Gallagher admitted that he's not satisfied with his minutes. I don't think anyone is satisfied if they don't play as much as they would like to, but I'll keep working hard so that every time I get the chance, I can help the team. Hopefully more starting opportunities will come my way. It's what did Jack Raspadori say in his MD interview? I'm very happy to play for this incredible club. I've only been here a short time, but I like everything about Atletico. The fans are incredible. I'm very happy and working hard while waiting for my opportunity. Gallagher told Diario AS, I'm very happy here. My goal is to win titles with Atleti. I want to have a more important place in the team. I'm very settled in now. My girlfriend and I love living here. It's an incredible city. So it could be posturing, but also be Gallagher speaking his truth. Gallagher is one of our highest earners, unless an English team swoops in and offers him 12 million pounds a year. He's making 9 million euros a year under his Atletico contract that runs for another 3.5 years. Maybe it's something you revisit in the summer. Same with Alexander Sørloth. But I don't know. I really want to know what you guys think of this, because I'm really, as you can probably tell, I am really split on this. And this segues kind of neatly into the club accounts. So as we all know, we talked about last week, Apollo Sports Capital, the sports arm of Apollo Global Management, they are coming into the club. They will become majority shareholders effective in the first financial quarter of 2026. So that tells me that maybe it's unlikely that they will make a capital injection, a financial injection that would allow Atletico to be really aggressive in January La Liga's salary rules and La Liga's financial controls make that difficult anyway. But Atletico, Ruben Aria reported this on his show this week. Revenues over 400 million euros for the first time in club history. And losses, we made losses. Every big club does. Loss of 6 million. That's it. Atlético de Madrid and financial viability and sustainability. Is this my club? No, it's great. And Ricky, I spoke with Ricky last week about Oscar Mayo, who's the chief operating officer at Atletico, and all these sponsorships that have come into the club. I think probably the most notable one right now is the F1 deal, where the Spanish Grand Prix moves to Madrid next year from Barcelona. If you go to the Puerta del Sol in the center of Madrid, they have like a whole countdown that started for the opening of the Madrid city circuit. Atletico are going to not host the Spanish Grand Prix, but the Metropolitano was the official supporting venue of the Spanish Grand Prix from next year through 2031. This is like hundreds of millions of euros per year. How did Real Madrid not get this, right? The Visitor Wanda sponsorship, the Riyadh Air sponsorship. Atletico announced another one today, I think a sports nutrition sponsorship. Google, Nike, Red Bull, all these deals. Oscar Mayo is bringing hundreds of millions of euros into the club every year now with these deals. I cannot thank him enough. He's doing top work. He's doing incredible work. Let's see if on the sporting side we can match that. Remember in August at the Noche de Bienvenidas when Simeone said, he said this at the welcome night, and also I think in like the first press conference of the season before we went out and laid an egg against Espanyol, he said the club is growing as a business, like institutionally, from the business and financial and economic point of view, the club is growing tremendously. Now, in a sporting sense, we, the players and the coaches, we have to match that growth with our results, with our play. So this is the challenge for Mateo Alemany. This is the challenge for Diego Simeone and the players for the rest of the year. I guess I can talk about the Getafe game now. I had a couple of things that I wanted to go back and forth on with Ricky, but I think we will push those back to next week. The Getafe game. Atletico are unbeaten in 11 in La Liga. It's the longest unbeaten run in any of the 5 major European leagues. And we are going to Estadio Coliseum, where we lost last year. That 2-1 defeat, Simeone said this multiple times, that 2-1 defeat kind of doomed our season in a way. It was the first time Atletico had lost to Getafe under El Cholo. There was a period, I don't know how many years it was. It was like maybe 9 years. I think it was 9 years where every Atletico Getafe game ended with a clean sheet to Atletico. Getafe did not score a goal on us in a span of 9 years. And it's been more even and a bit more difficult in these most recent fixtures. 2 wins, 2 draws, and 1 defeat in our last 5 league meetings with Getafe. That's, of course, not counting the 5-0 win in the Copa del Rey, the quarterfinals last spring. Getafe are, you want a club that knows what it's about, that understands its identity and embraces its identity every step of the way. That is Getafe under Jose Bordalas, who I think Bordalas is one of the best coaches in the country. He operates with a budget of like nothing every year. And every year, Getafe are consistently annoying. They're so annoying to play against. This year's iteration is no different. I think in Luis Milla, they have one of the more underrated midfielders in La Liga. Amaro Arambari is someone who's been linked with us several times over the years. A very combative Uruguayan midfielder, has that goal sense in him. I mean, he scored a brace against us last year, did he not? He did. He scored both of those goals in that 2-1 comeback. I mean, this is just a very difficult team. Borja Mayoral is a good striker, good finisher. This is going to be a difficult nut for Atleti to crack. I think Getafe are eighth right now. They're eighth right now, but a point off of sixth. They've only scored 12 goals in 12 games. They've conceded 14. This is a team that's not going to have the ball. We are going to be tasked with creating a lot against them. So, what is our lineup going to look like? Well, I'm gonna predict Oblak doesn't play, and we'll see if I'm wrong about that. But I think Atletico are going to be very cautious with Oblak coming back from Slovenia camp injured. Llorente at right back. I believe this is the weekend of Marc Pubil. Read a report in Marca today that Pubil has been impressive in training as of late. And especially this week, this is viewed as Pubil's big opportunity. I think Marc Pubil is going to start against Getafe, and we're going to see how he does. Hell yeah. Let's go. I'm excited. You guys know how much I like Pubil. Pubil, man, he gave an interview this week. I can't remember with which outlet. I apologize for that. But he said, I love being here at Atletico. I never want to leave. I want to retire as captain. Damn. Let's go for it, man. Do it. Let's see if you can do it. I love the attitude. So I think Pubil is going to start. Jimenez will start. Left back is going to be an interesting one. Ruggetti was there in training earlier this week. He gave an interview to Marca over the break talking about how he feels like he's adapting. He's trying to work on his weaknesses. And he thanked his teammates and everyone at the club for making him feel so welcome, which is great. When I've watched Ruggetti recently, I've seen a player who I think there's an element of excessive cautiousness to Matteo Ruggetti right now. I sense that there is a talented player there, but I think he's also pretty afraid of making a mistake. He also just looks kind of weird, and I think Sid Lowe called him clunky at left back. He's got a strong gait. He's athletic and can cover a lot of ground, but he doesn't have that acceleration. He's not like a burner. He doesn't have like great top speed or acceleration, that kind of pace, that kind of quickness. So I don't know. I think it'll be Ruggetti, but I'm not confident about that. Nico Gonzalez could well start at left back. Koke and Pablo Barrios in the middle. You know what? I'm going to put Nico on the right wing here, Baena on the left, and then Griezmann and Alvarez up top. As for a score prediction, I'm going to go 2-0 to Atleti. And the second goal won't come until very late. Thinking 86th minute, let's call it. And you know what? Let's have a little fun here. Let's predict the scorers. I think Alvarez will open the scoring. I really think this 15-day break, not traveling to Angola, not having to play with Argentina, this 15-day break for him is going to do him a lot of good. And I think he's going to look more refreshed and just more with it, and more, I guess, sharper in those final yards. So I think Alvarez will open the scoring, and what the heck, Jack Raspadori will come off the bench and close it. If you guys have lineup or scoreline predictions, let me know. Leave a comment. I think that is about all I have for today. When Ricky is back on the show, we're going to talk about a few more fun things, but that is where I'm going to leave it for tonight. So thank you all for listening to this episode of That Atleti Podcast. Another solo pod. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. Please leave any feedback. If there's anything I missed, just any comments, I love the discourse. Let's have a dialogue. Make sure to like and subscribe. Again, if you're watching here on YouTube, in addition, you can listen to the audio form of this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, really wherever you prefer to listen. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at That Atleti Podcast, intothecalderon.com, Facebook and Twitter at Into the Calderon. I'm at JB Beren. Ricky is at Ricky AM. I'll see you next time. Adios.